1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome into the Talkin G-MAC podcast. I'm your host, Katie Ilhuli, and we're excited to make another stop on the Talkin G-MAC Tailgate Tour as we make our way to Tiffin to visit with first-year head coach Zack Blair. Coach, congratulations on the new gig, and thanks for taking some time to chat with us today about Dragon football.
Not a problem. I really appreciate it. I'm really fired up to talk about the upcoming season here.
Well, I mentioned it right there, obviously taking over the program this spring after Coach Ekins left. You know, what was that transition like? You were already on staff. You were serving as offensive coordinator. So not necessarily a new place for you, but certainly a new role. What has that transition been like over the spring and summer?
It honestly has been really smooth. And all of that credit goes to our players and the administration and how they handled the transition. It was a pretty quick deal when it all went down. Coach Ekins texted me on a Monday night at 9 p.m. and told me to get in the office as soon as possible. And I was like, what the heck's going on? I didn't know if it was something good or bad. And ended up being pretty neutral in the fact that, I was going to potentially have the opportunity to interview for the job and take over here. But at the same time, wasn't exactly sure what the administration here was thinking and if they wanted to open it up or they wanted to promote from within. And obviously very blessed and thankful that they did that. But it was a wild 48 hours, really. Meetings and conversations with President Schumacher and our athletic director, Kelly Daniel. And it was smooth, to be honest with you. It took them about 48 hours to make the decision. And, we haven't looked back since I've taken over. And our kids have been fired up about some of the changes we've made, but also, I was a part of the foundation that Coach Ekins did lay, and I didn't want to take a jackhammer to that by any means. But, again, really excited to take over here, and it's been a massive blessing for me and my family.
Well, a perfect transition because you mentioned it right there. You were a part of Coach Ekins' staff and some of the success that you guys were able to see there. So maybe not reinventing the wheel as you take over, but what are some of those new things or what are some of the things that you wanted the opportunity to instill in this program as you take over as head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think it starts back to what makes Tiffin one of the best places to work, and that's the people, right? And I think if we can continue to instill that foundation that we laid when we got here with Coach Ekins, people matter, right? People matter. You could have an incredible facility, right, with a beautiful indoor and an awesome stadium and all these different things that we do have. But if you don't have the right people in place, then ultimately, they're just walls, right? We want to bring some saturation within those. And I think that again, the people are what make this place unique and something that we've really harped on through the recruiting process as I've taken over with this 27 class. We're trying to find elite kids, elite human beings to join our program. We have myself, Coach Jackson, Coach Rufner, and Coach Cox are the only 4 coaches that are returning from last fall. So we've had a decent amount of turnover here when everything happened. And again, when I was hiring out our staff, the most important thing I was looking for were elite human beings that could develop our kids to, yes, be really good football players, right? And that's the ultimate goal. But beyond that, when they leave this place and they graduate, we want them to be better husbands, better future fathers, better workers, better leaders, better community members, and that's something that as I've stepped into this role and as I've gotten the opportunity to hire hire our staff out and recruit some different kids, it's something that I feel like we've done at an elite level, in the last 6 months since everything kind of has transitioned.
You talked about some of the new staff. Obviously, talk about what your role is going to be with the offense as you kind of transition from OC to head coach. And then I know you brought in some new coordinators. So what's new about this staff and how has that been as fall camp has kicked off?
Man, it's been really smooth. I think the biggest word that we've been preaching within our program has been alignment. Alignment from the top down, and that's what gave me a ton of confidence when I took the opportunity to be the head coach here. Was from our president all the way down to the incoming freshman. The alignment was there, and I knew that I could take this thing over with full confidence in what our administration wanted, and from our players as well, and what they were looking for and what we were looking for. It matched really well. And again, going back to hiring coaches. Coach McEwen, who's going to be our new defensive coordinator, we had hired him before Coach Ekins left, right? And thankfully, I was a massive piece in that interview process. I'd previously worked with Coach McEwen at Saginaw Valley, before we came down here and took the Tiffin job. And me and him have an incredible relationship. And he's a guy that I can really trust. He's been in this profession for a decent amount of time at this point, and he's the oldest guy on staff and someone that I really lean heavily on. Lean heavily on as far as what we need to do programmatically. I can give him full trust on the defensive side of the football and know that he's going to take care of those guys and they're going to be in the right positions and execute their jobs at an elite level. On the offensive side, I promoted our offensive line coach from last year, Caleb Rufin, to be our offensive coordinator this past year. And he's done an unbelievable job at the organizational piece, logistics, handling our offense. I've been pretty hands off offensively. I'm going to still be coaching our quarterbacks and calling plays, but everything else is his. And he's done an unbelievable job. And it's really cool when you can have the continuity through my first 7 years in coaching, and he's been with me every step of the way all 7 years, and someone that I can trust beyond a shadow of a doubt to make sure that our offense is executing at a high clip. So those two guys, the additions there have been awesome. Dwight Jackson is going to be our special teams coordinator. He was a part of our staff last year, and just another guy that's just done an unbelievable job since he's gotten here. It's me and Coach Rufner have been here for the last 2 seasons, and then Coach Jackson was here for the last season, and then Coach Cox, obviously our strength and conditioning coach, has been here. But Coach Jackson's a guy that's really melted into our culture and our staff, and he's done an unbelievable job thus far through fall camp with our special teams, and I'm really excited to see what that unit does for us on Saturdays.
Well, I want to get into some of the X's and O's. The number one offense in the league last year for you guys under your leadership. And, you've got Ronald Blackman, who returns, who's been a part of that explosive offense that you guys have been able to produce over the last few seasons. Got a question mark at quarterback. What have you seen from the offense in fall camp, and how you hope to build on some of that offensive success that you were able to sustain last year, but maybe get you over the hump in some of those close games that you weren't able to close out?
Definitely. I think going back to continuity, right? Like some of our best playmakers are back this season, right? You have Ron Blackman, who in my opinion is an all-American type caliber player, a guy that has done it year in and year out, right? Has done it the last 3 seasons. And to see him run around this fall camp, and is the healthiest he's been, it's the fastest he's been, it's the strongest he's been. And not just that from an athletic standpoint, but this is the best I've seen him play the position of running back. I think the last few years that we've had him, he's been a freak athlete back there. He just goes and makes plays. I think the thing that he's added to his game and something that he's really taken upon himself to develop is, man, I want to be a true running back, right? So learning how our different schemes are affected by different fronts and pressures that we may be getting, or knowing and anticipating where the ball may hit based on different defensive end techniques. Like he's done an unbelievable job at learning what it takes to play the position, and I'm really excited to watch him run around this fall. It's gonna be really cool to see him develop and mature as he's gone through our program the last few years, and to see him go execute at a high level. That's gonna be a lot of fun for us to see. Another guy that's gonna be back is Jaden McKinstry, right? He was a guy that came up big for us in that last game against Finley on the last play of the game. A guy that's really developed his body even more than what it was last year. He's put on 20 pounds, since last fall, and seeing him this fall camp's been really exciting. And I think the best tight end in the conference, in my opinion, is our tight end Joey Zalewski. A guy that was an all conference player last year, a guy that can do it both in the run game and the pass game. But not just on the field. He's a guy that's really stepped up for us as a leader, and he's been a focal point for our culture. Right, a guy who shows up every day, does it the right way, and does it at an elite level. Right, like it's been really fun to see him completely buy into what we're doing and him see the results of that process that he's put himself through. That's been fun, and seeing those guys. There's a number of other guys I can mention, but again, the continuity for me was really important with what our offense looked like, and all of those things. Are we adding some wrinkles? Of course, as should every team when they look at their offense and their defense, right? Continually improve, and we did that this offseason, and excited to see what that looks like on tape as we get here into the fall.
Well, I mentioned the question at quarterback. You obviously lose all conference player Alex Johnson, who was a veteran of this program. He brought a lot of continuity that you talk about to that offensive side of the ball. Without having to give away where that battle is at, what are you looking for when you're looking to name a starting quarterback?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that Alex did an elite job of since he's gotten here was just his operation within our offense. He was a kid that came from a system at Washington that was, very explosive, right? And for him to see and take some of the pro concepts that we had here at Tiffin the last few years, and to see him really take his game to the next level, right, was just him understanding and learning that he didn't have to do too much, right? And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to for that position is who can operate our offense the best, right? How are we and when are we most successful offensively, right? And then who can go out and just and manage it the best, right? That's really what we're looking for at that point. And then the most important piece to that is leadership, right? Who's demonstrating their mission the best, right? Who's going about their business and cultivating the relationships that they need to, right? And then that position above every other position has to elevate the needs of the team above their own, right? And a thing that I think we're going to be um, something that we've really taken home and something that we've really tried to hammer home to our quarterback room is listen, this is not about you, right? As much as the outside world is going to tell you it's about, you're going to go win games for us, and that's not at all how we've gone about our business in that room. We want to stay humble in this room and understand that. Listen, it's about getting the ball to the best players possible. It's about managing our offense, and it's about making sure that all 10 guys who are in that huddle can look at you in the face and know that they have full confidence in you to be able to go execute at a high level. And we have a few guys who have been battling for that spot, and it's been really fun here as we've gotten through the course of camp to watch those guys battle it out. And whoever ends up on top, I know that they've done a really good job of leading that our offense, and not necessarily from a selfish standpoint, but from a who's going to manage and lead, not just our offense but our team the best.
Switching gears a little bit to the other side of the ball, when I looked at your schedule from last year, you lost 4 games by a combined total of 20 points, and 2 of those were overtime losses. One of those close games was really early on in the season to number one Ferris State. So when you see that, and that there was just some minor mishaps that transpired to not get you over the hump in so many of those games, how do you build on that, knowing that you were right there, but also recognizing that there were likely things that happened that you needed to clean up to be able to come out with some of those games with a W? How do you build on that in fall camp with the guys that you have that are returning with a veteran group like this?
Yeah, it honestly has just been our process driven mindset. We have not talked about our week one opponent. We have not talked about winning the GMAC championship. We have not talked about the playoffs. We have not talked about last season, right? Like we are solely focused on and being obsessed with doing things the right way in this given moment. And we can trust that if our process is really good and we go about our business the right way and we're obsessed with how we go about everything that we do, we know that the results we're going to want are naturally going to come. Right. And so we've really hammered that home here specifically over fall camp of listen, we're not going to talk about anything other than the day of work that's ahead. We want to put our nose to the grindstone. We want to put our head down. We want to go to work, right? And ultimately, that's going to be what you see from us this year, right? Regardless of what happens week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, we're going to put our head down and go to work, and we're going to play a nameless, faceless opponent every single week and focus on our process and how we go about our business, and make sure that the way that we do things is right. Right, we're not going to skip any steps to make sure we get the result that we want. That's not how you sustain success. You sustain success by putting your head down, going to work every single day, and doing it the right way. And that's how we're going to go about how we operate here within our program.
When you talk about identity from the defensive side of the ball, you've got a new defensive coordinator. I'm sure there's been some newness on that side. What has been something that you've been looking for from that side of the ball in fall camp?
Yeah, I think it goes back to how we're going to win games programmatically. We want to be one unit when we step out on that field, and that's not just offense, defense, special teams. That's how we go about winning football games, right? We win games as a program. Um, and the coolest thing that I've seen from the defensive side of the ball is that buy-in, the buy-in of man. We're going to talk a lot about situational football. We're going to talk a lot about how a certain opponent on offense is going to affect how we're going to call the game on the flip side on our offense, right? Like we're going to talk a lot about those things, how we want to handle different situations. And there's been so much open conversation between our staff from both sides of the ball, as well as our team, right? Like we install situations as a team. So everyone knows exactly what the objective is. So everyone knows exactly how you define each situation. And we've repped situational football every single day, right? You talk about red zone, third downs, you talk about open field base downs, you talk about backed up. talk about 4-minute situations, 2-minute situations. Every single day and every single period that we have in practice has clear purpose. And our kids need to know and understand that, what that purpose is, what their job is within that situation. Because let's be honest, very rarely are you just going out and running plays in a game, right? Every play has context, and we have to understand that context. And that's been communicated and talked about so much on both sides of the football. And having that identity of, listen, like, it's not just about the offense going out and being the number one in the GMAC. It's not about the defense going out and having a ton of success. It's about winning football games and how we do that as a unit. And again, the alignment that I talked about earlier, like, I've never seen it. I've never seen this place more aligned than the last 6 months. And a testament to our defensive staff and our defensive players for buying into that.
I know we're still a couple of weeks away, but you open the season on the road on a Thursday against Carson Newman. So the week is going to look a little bit different. You're going to be on the road. You're going to be traveling down to Tennessee, so a little bit of a longer road trip. Um, Not necessarily what does that matchup look like from an X's and O's standpoint, but how do you handle that first week on the road, it being a Thursday night game, it being earlier in the season as a week zero game? Just how does all of that scheduling and what are you looking from your team from maybe an emotional standpoint to head out into the 2026 season on a fast start on the right foot?
Yeah, I mean, our kids are excited. We had a team meeting about, kind of what the next steps are and what the schedule is going to look like, until we reach that August 27th game. And um, I, from my perspective and from our staff's perspective, the best thing we can do is be transparent with our kids. Yes, we want to put our head down. We want to go to work every single day, and we want to make sure that we're accomplishing everything we need to within that given day. But at the same point, we wanna give a clear expectation for our kids of, hey, here's what the next X amount of days are gonna look like, right? Here's what travel is gonna look like. Here's what our game week is gonna look like. I played at Ball State, so, like, I kind of know the whole Maction deal. This kind of feels like a little bit like Maction, right? Where your Sunday is your Tuesday, your Monday is your Wednesday, your Tuesday is your Thursday, and then Wednesday for us is gonna be our Friday. It's gonna be our travel day. You know, I think again it goes back to, can we just create the continuity within each one of those days so our kids know exactly what the expectation is, and what they need to do to go have a successful Tuesday that is going to be on a Sunday, right? Or how we have it go and have a successful Wednesday that's going to be on a Monday, or what a travel day looks like on a Wednesday as opposed to a Friday. Um, if we can create that transparency, there's not going to be as many surprises, which is going to help their emotional intelligence, right? And they're going to be able to be a little bit more level headed, knowing exactly what they can expect. Nobody wants to be surprised. That's when you start to see quote unquote crash outs, right? We want to be clear and concise and transparent with what that game week's going to look like so they know exactly what to expect.
Piggybacking off of that, when you have your first two non-conference games, your first two games of the season on the road, before you ever even play a matchup at Tiffin, you come back and you host your first GMAC opponent on September 19th at home against Thomas More. It's going to be homecoming. How important are those first two games in the non-conference space, knowing that they're going to be road tests? How do those help you prepare for what is the gauntlet of the GMAC season, and knowing that you're not going to see fans in Tiffin until midway through September?
It's massive, to be honest with you. It's massive because you want to create that momentum that leads into GMAC play, right? And when me and our athletic director Kelly Daniel sat down and we started thinking about how we wanted to schedule out, this 2026 season, right? We talked a lot about wanting to have that bye week following two long road trips, right? You go 8 hours down to Carson Newman on a Thursday night, right? We flip back around. We're probably not going to get home till Friday morning at some point, give our kids the weekend, and then we play up at Northern Michigan, up at the Superior Dome in the Upper Peninsula, which is another 8-hour road trip, 10 days later, right? And again, it goes back to, okay, well, if that's going to be our first two games, we need to make sure that we can provide that breath of fresh air when we get to that bye week that kind of gives us the ability to decompress a little bit before we do get into GMAC play. But I think it goes back to just trying to create as much momentum as possible going into GMAC play, right? Especially as you start to look at the conference and the caliber of teams that are in the conference this year, right? Again, we had three teams in the playoffs last year, right? And it's like, man, we have a really, really good conference. And if you don't bring your best week in and week out, you're going to lose football games, right? And so how can we best prepare our kids is making sure that their bodies are right during that bye week, right? Giving them the opportunity to take a breath, right? Providing that stability providing that transparency with them so they know exactly what the purpose and intent behind why we scheduled the way we did. Our kids are fired up because they're two fun tests right away, right? You go down and play a really good opponent, Carson Newman, who's going to be very disciplined, and they're going to run a triple option football, and if they're going to make you pay if you aren't perfectly disciplined in your run fits, and they're going to make you pay offensively by holding the ball for a long time and keeping you off the field. And then you go up to Northern Michigan, which is again, an 8-hour road trip, and a team from the GLIAC that is much improved, right? They have a new staff up there, and they finished the year out the way they probably wanted to, and I'm sure they have a ton of momentum, from the spring into this fall, and it's going to be a test for us as well, right? We were at Saginaw Valley, and our head coach used to say, when you cross the Mackinac Bridge, you're 10 points down, right? And so that's going to be our mentality as we cross the bridge, on that Friday afternoon. Is, man, we got to make sure we're solid in our preparation and our approach for that game. But yeah, man, if you don't bring your best week in, week out in the GMAC, you're gonna know, and you're gonna lose football games. So those two games will be pivotal for us as we get into GMAC play and host Thomas More on September 19th.
I want to talk about managing expectations. Tiffin football has seen great success over the last several seasons. You've won conference championships. You've made it to play. You've made playoff runs. You've made deep playoff runs, right? You're picked fourth in the GMAC this year. But how, as head coach, do you manage the expectations that come along with Tiffin football as of late?
Yeah, I think it goes back to our process, right? Like we don't set goals as a program, right? And as countercultural as that may be, we don't, right? We create championship habits, right? And our the daily actions that we have every single day, right? We want them to align with championship habits, right? We're not going to talk about, our kids have not mentioned one time about the GMAC polls, right? Our staff has not talked about it one single time, right? To be honest with you, it was probably what I expected. But the thing that I've loved is it's not been a topic of conversation. Right? Our kids have just gone to work, they've put their nose down, and they just said, hey, listen, we're going to give our best every single day. Right? We're going to be so focused on how we go about our business, right? And so focused on our process that ultimately the results that we want at the end of the year are going to be exactly what they are. Right? And we have to have the confidence in the process and how we go about what we do, right? To know that the results are going to be exactly what they need to be. So, to be honest with you, that's how we've managed it. It hasn't really been much managing. It's just been, hey, this is our culture now. Like, we're bought into doing things the right way. And, yeah, it's part of the deal, right? There's preseason polls, but like ultimately what matters is what happens in the postseason. And we're solely focused on today, right? Solely focused on going about our business the right way and doing things at an elite level.
Well, Zach, we appreciate your time today. Loved getting to learn a little bit more about a Coach Blair-led Tiffin football program. We're excited for Toe to meet Leather in just a couple of weeks, and best of luck this season. We'll be rooting for all of you in the non-conference space before you start playing each other, and we may remain a little bit more neutral at that point.
Appreciate it, Katie. Really appreciate your time.